In the heart of the Northwoods, where towering pine trees brush against the sky and rivers serenade the valleys, a larger-than-life legend roams, Paul Bunyan. Accompanied by his loyal sidekick, Babe the Blue Ox, Paul is famous for his incredible feats, like shaping mountains with a single swing of his axe and carving rivers with just one stride. But this summer, Paul is up against a different kind of challenge, not one involving nature or lumber, but a celebration. The quaint town of Lumberton, excited to host the most spectacular 4th of July parade in its history, extends a warm invitation to the giant lumberjack himself. It's a perfect opportunity for Paul to swap his flannel shirt for a festive sash and lead a parade bursting with fireworks, marching bands, and the spirit of small-town pride. However, when a giant steps into a tiny town, things are bound to get a little tricky. As Paul and Babe make their way to Lumberton, they encounter surprises at every corner. Some laugh out loud funny, some heartwarming, and all truly unforgettable. This is the tale of one legendary man, one proud town, and a parade that will be remembered for ages. Chapter 1, A Giant Invitation. In the heart of the northern woods, where snow stubbornly clung to the mountaintops even in June and the pines shared their ancient stories with the wind, Paul Bunyan sat by a crackling fire. His massive axe leaned against a boulder that could easily be mistaken for a barn, while Babe the Blue Ox lounged nearby, her head curled around a hill as if it were the coziest pillow. So far, summer had been blissfully quiet, no storms to conquer, no rivers to carve, and no forests to clear. Just tranquility, stacks of pancakes, and a wealth of stories shared around the fire. One morning, as Paul flipped flapjacks the size of wagon wheels, a peculiar sound broke the serene silence of the trees. It wasn't the familiar rustle of branches or the call of an eagle, instead, it was the determined whir of a male plane, weaving through the trees and dropping a giant red and white striped envelope from the sky. The envelope floated down gracefully, landing smack in the middle of Paul's breakfast. Curious, Paul opened the envelope, raising an eyebrow as he read the message inside. It was an invitation from the mayor of Lumberton, a quaint town nestled between two rivers, renowned for its lively 4th of July celebrations. This year, the mayor wrote, they wanted to do something extraordinary, much more than usual. They wanted Paul Bunyan to be the Grand Marshal of their Independence Day parade. Well, would you look at that, Paul mused, stroking his beard in contemplation. Now that's something new. Babe let out a low bellow of agreement. She had always had a soft spot for fireworks. Standing tall, Paul stretched until the treetops trembled. Looks like it's time to dust off our walking boots, Babe. We've got a parade to lead. Chapter 2, Planning Big. Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox stood at the edge of their forest home, gazing down the long path that wound its way to Lumberton. The invitation fluttered in Paul's hand, and his mind was already buzzing with ideas for the parade. How does a giant lumberjack fit into a small town celebration? And how could Babe join in without causing a ruckus? Babe, Paul said, scratching his chin thoughtfully, we need a solid plan. This parade means a lot to the town, and we want to make sure we get it just right. Babe let out a gentle snort, her massive tail flicking with excitement. Paul could tell she was thrilled but also a bit anxious. After all, towns and roads weren't exactly designed for creatures of their size. They started gathering supplies for the journey, sacks of flapjacks, enormous water buckets, and a map that stood as tall as a tree trunk. Paul sketched out ideas for floats made from logs and leaves, even brainstorming ways to decorate Babe so she could proudly show off her stunning blue fur and impressive horns. We also need to consider the parade route, Paul said. If the streets are too narrow, we might have to make some adjustments. Babe nodded in agreement. Paul envisioned lifting fallen trees to clear a path and constructing bridges wide enough for them to cross. This was going to be a parade like no other, and every little detail had to be just right. As the sun dipped below the treetops, Paul felt a surge of excitement. They weren't just heading to Lumberton. They were about to bring a legend to life. Chapter 3, Trouble on the Trail. Bright and early the next morning, Paul Bunyan and his trusty companion, Babe the Blue Ox, set off with excitement bubbling in their hearts for the adventure that lay ahead. The forest around them was a wild tapestry of towering trees reaching for the sky. At first, the trail was smooth, and the cheerful birds seemed to sing just for them, encouraging their journey. But soon enough, the path took a turn for the challenging. A massive fallen tree lay across their route, its trunk resembling a giant's log blocking their way. Without missing a beat, Paul bent down and, with a powerful swing of his axe, split the tree right down the middle. Babe carefully stepped over the pieces, her hooves leaving deep impressions in the soft earth. They pressed on, but the hurdles kept coming. When they reached a river, Paul quickly realized that the old wooden bridge wouldn't hold Babe's weight. It creaked and groaned ominously as she attempted to cross, threatening to give way beneath her. Thinking fast, Paul gathered some sturdy logs and built a new, robust bridge that was wide enough for both of them to cross safely. As they continued, the sky darkened ominously, and thunder rumbled overhead. Suddenly, a storm broke loose, drenching them in rain and turning the trail into a slippery mess. Babe slid and stumbled, but Paul was right there, keeping her steady. Together, they pushed onward, determined to reach Lumberton in time for the parade. Despite the challenges they faced, their spirits stayed high. They understood that the adventure was part of the fun, and each obstacle only brought them closer to the celebration waiting at the end of their journey. Chapter 4, Parade Panic. Back in Lumberton, the townsfolk gathered at the town hall, their faces a mix of excitement and anxiety. The mayor was pacing back and forth at the front of the room, clearly on edge. "We want this to be the best 4th of July parade ever," he declared, "but how on earth do we fit Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox on our narrow main street? The streets are tight, and I'm not sure the bridges can handle their weight." The town carpenter shook his head in disbelief. "We can't build floats or stands tall enough for a giant like him. The decorations would get crushed, and I doubt the crowds would fit either." Mothers clutched their children, pondering what it would mean to have such a colossal guest in their small town. Some thought Paul was just a tall tale, but now that the invitation was accepted, the giant was really on his way. The mayor raised his hands, calling for silence. "We need to figure this out. Lumberton won't shy away from a challenge. Let's think big, just like Paul himself." Volunteers jumped into action, measuring streets and sketching out maps. Plans were set in motion to widen the main road, reinforce the bridges, and clear any trees that might obstruct the giant lumberjack's path. Amid the chaos, a sense of pride began to swell. They were about to host a legend, and no matter the hurdles, they were determined to welcome Paul and Babe with open arms. Chapter 5, A Grand Arrival. The 4th of July dawned bright and clear, filling the air with a sense of excitement in Lumberton. The townspeople gathered along the streets, their faces lit up with joy and anticipation. Kids waved flags and held up their homemade banners, while the band fine-tuned their instruments, gearing up for the big moment. Everyone was buzzing with anticipation for the grand arrival of their legendary guest. Then, out of nowhere, a distant rumble rolled through the valley. At first, it sounded like thunder, but the sky was perfectly clear. Suddenly, from behind the trees at the edge of town, a massive figure emerged, Paul Bunyan, towering over the rooftops, with Babe the Blue Ox lumbering alongside him. The crowd gasped in awe and erupted into cheers as the giant lumberjack came into view, his grin as wide as the river itself. Paul raised his hand in a warm wave, and just then, fireworks exploded in the sky, showering the town with vibrant red, white, and blue sparks. Babe's horn sparkled in the sunlight, and her deep blue fur shimmered like a precious sapphire. The mayor stepped forward, shaking Paul's enormous hand with enthusiasm. "Welcome to Lumberton, Paul. We're thrilled to have you lead our parade." Paul nodded, his eyes sparkling with delight. "Thank you, Mayor. Let's make this a day to remember." With that, the parade was all set to kick off, and the excitement in Lumberton soared to new heights. Chapter 6, Red, White, and Blue Ox. When Paul and Babe made their grand entrance, the town of Lumberton came alive. Paul eagerly rolled up his sleeves, ready to pitch in, while Babe happily munched on a bale of hay adorned with stars and stripes. The mayor and the townsfolk gathered around, buzzing with excitement to hear Paul's plans. "We've got to make this parade unforgettable," Paul declared, "which means every float, every decoration, and every step of the march should embody the spirit of the 4th of July." With a brush as big as a tree trunk, Paul started painting Babe's impressive horns in vibrant red, white, and blue stripes. Babe stood tall and proud, her magnificent head gleaming in the summer sun. Next, Paul dove into designing massive floats crafted from logs, leaves, and wildflowers. He effortlessly lifted hefty tree trunks, creating arches and platforms that would be visible to everyone. The townspeople joined in, laughing and sharing stories as they built each float together. Paul also took charge of clearing the parade route, moving fallen branches and widening the street with Babe's powerful shoulders. Together, they transformed the small town into a festive wonderland. By evening, the town shimmered with patriotic colors, and Babe was the star of the show, vibrant, proud, and ready to lead the parade with Paul right by her side. Chapter 7, March of the Giants. The day of the parade had finally come, and the streets of Lumberton buzzed with music, laughter, and the mouth-watering aroma of popcorn and barbecue. At the forefront was Paul Bunyan, beaming with pride in a bright sash that proclaimed him Grand Marshal. Close behind, Babe the blue ox trotted along, her painted horns glistening in the sunlight. Children cheered and waved, their eyes sparkling with wonder at the sight of this giant duo. As the parade kicked off, Paul took long, confident strides, effortlessly clearing fallen trees from the path to keep things moving smoothly. With each step, he tossed out enormous candy bars, each one the size of a lunchbox, to the thrilled crowd. Babe playfully shook her head, sending a flurry of colorful confetti dancing through the air. Trailing behind them were floats adorned with vibrant wildflowers and patriotic red, white, and blue banners. Marching bands filled the air with lively tunes, while townsfolk proudly waved flags and sang along. The atmosphere was electric, and everyone felt like they were part of something truly extraordinary. Paul couldn't help but smile as he gazed down at the joyful faces around him. This was more than just a parade, it was a heartfelt celebration of community, history, and the unique bond between a giant and a small town. As the final float rolled by, the crowd erupted into applause, eagerly anticipating the grand finale. Chapter 8, Fireworks and Folklore. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, splashing the sky with vibrant hues of orange and purple, the streets of Lumberton fell into a hush, buzzing with anticipation. Paul Bunyan stood proudly in the heart of town, his massive silhouette framed by the dimming light. Next to him, Babe the blue ox raised her head, eager for the grand finale. With a simple nod from Paul, the first firework soared into the night, a stunning explosion of red, white, and blue that illuminated the sky like a colossal sparkler. One by one, the fireworks erupted in a symphony of colors, their echoes dancing through the hills and valleys surrounding Lumberton. Children cheered and pointed in delight, adults exchanged smiles and held hands, and even the stars seemed to twinkle a little brighter amidst the festive atmosphere. Paul gazed at the crowd, a warm feeling swelling in his chest, knowing this was a moment that would be cherished for years to come. As the final firework faded into a trail of sparkling light, the mayor stepped forward. "Thank you, Paul and Babe, for sharing your legend with us. This 4th of July will be etched in our memories forever." Paul tipped his hat with a grin. "It's been my pleasure to celebrate with all of you. Remember, every story grows larger when we share it together." With the night sky still aglow, the people of Lumberton felt they had witnessed something truly extraordinary, a legend brought to life on the most patriotic day of the year. The 4th of July in Lumberton turned into a truly special day, all thanks to the arrival of Paul Bunyan and Babe the blue ox. What started as a simple invitation blossomed into a celebration brimming with laughter, camaraderie, and unforgettable memories. The towering lumberjack and his trusty ox reminded everyone that no matter how daunting the challenge, it can always be tackled with kindness, teamwork, and a sprinkle of fun. The townsfolk discovered that sometimes, the most incredible stories unfold when we embrace the unexpected with open arms. Long after the fireworks had dimmed and the parade had wrapped up, the spirit of that day continued to resonate in the hearts of everyone present, serving as a beautiful reminder that legends are crafted not just in stories, but in the moments we share together.